11M, or the 11th of March, was a terrorist attack in 2004 where at 7:35 a.m., 10 bombs exploded in 4 trains headed towards the Atocha station in Madrid, one of the busiest stations in Spain. This bomb resulted in the death of 192 people and injured over 1,500. While this attack was not as catastrophic on a scale compared to 9/11, what makes this unique are the events that followed shortly after. 3 days after the attack, the national elections were to take place. Previous to the elections, the right party, known as the Popular Party, had the clear vote in winning the elections. However, following the attack, the elections resulted in a victory for the Socialist Party. In viewing how this attack significantly impacted a national election, many academic investigators question whether this political shift was viewed as a victory for the terrorists and if it is possible for terrorists to alter national politics. In examining these claims, I will address 3 questions. First, I will discuss the terrorist attack and analyze whether terrorism can be a coercive threat in influencing national politics. Second, I will analyze the media covering the election in regards to its partisan bias and how this impacted the elections. And finally, I will analyze the population's general response to the attack with relation to protests that occurred just days before the election. This presentation will ultimately argue that the terrorist attack on the 11th of March by itself was not the sole reason for the political shift of the elections, but rather it was a combination of the way in which the Popular Party responded to the attacks and the public's negative reactions that were fueled both by the media and the political protests leading to the election day. Immediately after the attack occurred, all signs led to the Spanish terrorist group ETA. Euskadi ta Atzgatasuna, or ETA, is an extremist terrorist organization located in the Basque Country, who are known for their political attacks with the objective of obtaining individual rights and separation from the Spanish state. Because of its past history with terrorist attacks throughout Spain, it was an easy assumption that they could be guilty of such an attack. That being said, a series of events that followed proved this not to be the case at all. The day after the attack took place, the terrorist organization formally denied any responsibility. Additionally, clear evidence arose that deterred ETA from being the culprits. A rise of opposing evidence with the discovery of a letter from al-Qaeda claiming responsibility clearly showed both the Spanish public and Europe as a whole that ETA was not to blame and that an investigation should now be directed towards al-Qaeda. Yet, even with clear evidence opposing the initial claim, the incumbent party continued to stand by its original accusation. Political scientists have discovered that the party may have had a hidden agenda in using ETA as a scapegoat for political gain. Specifically, one of their major platforms was their success in battling against national terrorism. In continuing to accuse ETA, it was understood that this would support the party come election time. Additionally, the government was not supported in sending troops to Iraq, and with al-Qaeda as a possible suspect, it could damage their image. We can see the general population's view on Iraq when looking at Table 8. According to the table, about 8 in every 10 Spaniards posed a negative view on the government's decision to be involved in the war. That being said, it is interesting to note that come election time, voters did not believe it to have influenced their vote. What this can demonstrate, perhaps, was that their dissatisfaction towards the current government was not specifically directed towards their foreign policy. This poll asks Spaniards what they believe to be the 3 key issues in the country today. When looking at the line regarding terrorism and ETA, we can see that there is a significant decline in the beginning of 2002 to the end of 2003. It is not until the attack in March that public concern for terrorism rose from 42% in January to 78% in March of 2004. In viewing the sudden rise for concern, it is believed that the Popular Party used this to their advantage in their public agenda. When focusing on the terrorism and foreign policy columns, we can see that the Popular Party had the largest support. Because the strengths in the Popular Party's platform reside in these areas, it would seem appropriate to continue to accuse ETA and evade committing al-Qaeda as the attacker. The public, however, did not take the strategy in a positive manner. Viewing that the Popular Party was continuing to accuse ETA solely as a political strategy, the public grew distrustful of their current government. Much evidence concludes that the attack itself did not influence the election directly, but rather it was the way in which the government responded to the attack that lost confidence of its voters. What many researchers believe impacted the electoral results was the mobilization of new voters who initially were not expected to cast their ballots, the majority of these being young students. The reasoning behind this, they believe, is that many who decided to cast a vote did so out of a civil duty to the country to overthrow a party that was guilty of anti-democratic behavior. Based off the voting estimates before the attack, it was widely expected that the Popular Party would win. When looking at the graph, you can see its transition from the beginning of January of 2004 up to March before the elections. The 2 columns that are highlighted were dated from the 1st of March to the 6th. However, in just 5 days' time after the attack, the Socialist Party increased its votes by 5%, landing them the unexpected victory. When looking at the impact that the student mobilization made on the election, the first 2 questions of opting to vote for a party after the attacks and was not going to vote but did so after the attacks show a clear advantage towards the Socialist Party. Among one of the highest percentages, 11%, went to those who believe the current government's foreign policy with Iraq led to the terrorist attack. While the way the party handled the attack contributed to its downfall, the media can be considered the platform that projected its actions on a national stage. The media was able to expose and inform the public about the government's corrupt practices in both an efficient and increased critical manner than the political parties. At the initial period of the attack, all major papers such as El País, El Mundo, and ABC unanimously issued stories publicly accusing ETA. However, a clear partisanship began to separate these papers. ABC, a conservative news source that supported the Popular Party, lost a significant portion of viewership to liberal newspapers such as El País, that increases viewership from 35.2% to 52% after the attack. In losing its confidence in the current government, the public actively sought alternative news sources. This also demonstrates that the media did not support the government and was a catalyst for political change. According to the general public, the terrorist attack did impact the election. However, when asking the mobilized young voters, 73.1% said that the information following the attack did not influence their personal choice, and if they believed the media had influenced the general population, 59.7% agreed it did. What this perhaps demonstrates is the media's failure in connecting with the younger population. While the media did play a role in exposing the current government, the protests before the election are seen as the final act in shifting the political climate. Formerly known as 13M, this protest consisted mostly of young voters who joined as a response to the lack of transparency committed by the government and the frustration of not receiving the truth. When adding this sentiment with Spain's involvement in Iraq, Spaniards were considered very anti-war. Based on the graph above, we can see that the protest played a significant role in the mobilization of voters in favor of the Socialist Party. When looking at the employment situation section, we can see that the student vote placed a greater weight on the Socialist Party of 1.16 compared to the Popular Party. Students, therefore, were seen to have the highest turnout rate for any given party in electoral history. As the protests commenced, many compared the current government's behavior with that of the Franco-era dictatorship. Researcher Cristina Fomanaya presents an excellent chart of some of the slogans displayed during the protest, all generally being very anti-war. This protest is a perfect example of a democratic nation that actively fights for political transparency in an otherwise anti-democratic system. After analyzing the issues presented, it can be concluded that the demand for civil rights and a change in politics were not directly caused by the al-Qaeda terrorists, but rather from the activism instilled in its Spanish citizens. Through student mobilization and political awareness brought forth by the media, true democracy was able to succeed in the end.